I have to shoot. Hold on a second. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Virginia SBDC's Google to Great webinar series. This webinar series is designed to give you an overview of how to actually use the powerful tools that Google has created and some practical tips from a small business perspective. Each webinar focuses on one Google product. If you missed any of our other webinars, you can find a recorded version of the webinar on the Virginia SBDC website, virginiasbdc.org, under online training. All of our Google to Great webinars are presented by Ray Sidney Smith, a self-proclaimed Googleologist and president of W3 Consulting, a digital business strategy firm that provides training on how to use various web-based technologies to small businesses. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type those questions into the chat window and Ray will do his best to answer them. Without further ado, here's Ray Sidney Smith.
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you to the Virginia SBDC for having me. This morning we'll be talking about Google Calendar, and if you guys are on Twitter, feel free to go ahead and follow at W3 Consulting, and you can hashtag Google to Great with any questions you have after the webinar. During the webinar, you can, of course, go ahead and use the question panel. So today we're going to be talking about Google Calendar, and as Google's main page talks about, it is really helping you to be able to organize your schedule and share events with others. In this case, it says with friends, but obviously if you're using Google Apps for Business or the basic Google Calendar program, or the Google Calendar program, there's no basic. The Google Calendar program for your business, just using your personal Gmail account, you can go ahead and do that for your small business as well. And so we'll be talking about some of those things. A little bit of background, though. Google Calendar, of course, was launched in 2006. So the product is nearly 6 years old. It's older than 6 years old now, because it was April 2006, I believe, that it went ahead and launched in beta. And it came out of beta in sometime around 2009, mid-2009. So it's a fairly robust product. It's a fairly mature product. And so it's something that you can pretty well depend upon in your small business for purposes of having your calendar on your desktop, having your calendar while you're on the road, whether that's on your feature phone or smartphone. Really wonderful part about Google Calendar, I find, is that it has email and SMS capabilities so that you can go ahead and get reminders for events by text message or email. And you can also add events to and from your main calendar by text message. So it's a very, very powerful product. And so I'm going to show you around the system, and we'll get going, talking about some of the items in Q&A. This is the main screen that you're going to see. And really, managing your time and team is also a matter of being able to see and have an interface that really works well for you. So as you can see in this particular system, you have the main calendar screen, which shows you some other stuff. And we'll get into this when I actually open up the live Google Calendar page. But you basically have, this is what Google Calendar looks like. A screenshot as of yesterday showing Independence Day on the calendar. So happy Independence Day to everyone. And you can see in the bottom left-hand corner shows you the number of calendars you have created. So the first thing about Google Calendar that you should note is that you can have your main calendar, and notice that Google creates one called Tasks. The Tasks is on the far right-hand side of the screen. I've enabled the calendar so it shows up on your right-hand side of the screen. That task list is also the same task list that you have in Gmail that I talked about the last webinar. And so you can have as many lists as you want within Gmail Tasks, or under Tasks, which is called Google Tasks now. Google Tasks can have as many lists as you want, and you can keep as many tasks as you want within that list. Now, the only limitation to that is that those lists are not shareable, so they are your list only, their personal list. So just know that you would need to separate your personal tasks from those from a project management software, for instance, if you're using one outside of Google. And but if you're in Google Apps, you could definitely use one of the plugins for Google Apps within the app marketplace for it. Anyway, so back in the circled area, you have your calendars, the ones that you created or that you have control, absolute control over, or some level of control over. And then you have other calendars, ones that people have given you access to, and you have varying levels of control over those particular calendars. So under other calendars, if you're shared with, say, one of your staff members' calendars, this is his or her personal calendar, You go ahead and you'll see that under other calendars, and then you're able to go ahead and interact with those based on the level of administrative access that person has given to that calendar. The really wonderful part about other calendars is that you can go out to other organizations, say that there's a nonprofit organization or an industry-based or a professional trade organization that covers your area of business. You can go out there and find if they have a Google Calendar where they publish their events, and then go ahead and subscribe to them right directly within your Google Calendar, your normal Google Calendar, or within Google Calendar Apps for Business, the Apps for Business installation service. So you can go ahead and subscribe to these things and then turn on and off the view. Basically, if you click on any of those links on the left-hand side panel within the circle that I'm showing, you can go ahead and click on any one of them, and it turns off the view so that you don't get deluged by too much information at any given time. You can basically filter and focus on just the calendars that are important to you. As I talked about, on the right-hand side calendar is the task pane, and that task pane can be turned on and off. So you can expand the calendar for visual purposes. You can turn it on and off. I like the task calendar for fitting there when I need to track personal tasks for my day. I can sort of put some quick items in there that have come to my attention while I'm looking at my calendar. Oh, I need to get this done. I need to get that done. I can put it right there in the calendar, and then I know those are things that I'm going to do right now, just to clear them up and get my day started. So whenever I review my calendar at the beginning of the day, the task list allows me to be able to do that. And I use that just for those types of ad hoc, quick and dirty type of tasks that I need to get done right now, but are not going to be really long term. So that's a good place for them.
Ray, can I interrupt for 1 second? Can you try to readjust your microphone? You're sounding a little, your audio is harder to hear this morning.
Okay, let's see if I can use the microphone. How are we doing now?
I think that's better.
Okay. So in order to access Google Calendar, we go ahead and go to google.com/calendar. And it will, of course, if you haven't logged in yet, it will ask you to go ahead and create a Google account. In this case, it'll take whatever email address you'd like that's not already a Google account, and then it will, put you through the sign-up process. But most of you will most likely already have a Google account, and so therefore you'll just log in. If you have a Gmail account, for instance, just log in via Gmail. If you have a Google Apps for Business account, it will go ahead and have you log in through Google Apps, and you'll be taken to this main screen. So as you can see, right now we have no calendars really in view other than the holiday calendars. And so I'm just expanding these calendars for purposes of you being able to see, but none of them really have any content in them other than the Canadian holidays calendar. Not sure why Gmail decided that I wanted the Canadian calendars instead of the U.S. calendar, but either way. So here we are. We have my calendars and other calendars, and as I was talking about before, just quickly, so I don't forget, we can go ahead and look for other calendars. So if I just click on the down arrow, I can go ahead and browse. See how it says Browse Interesting Calendars? This takes me to a view that allows me to go ahead and see various calendars that I might want to follow. So I might want to follow, Danish holidays or some other holidays. Potentially, if you have an international customer base, it might be very nice for you to be able to figure out which holidays are important to them and potentially have something festive within a retail shop, for instance, or something like that. So you can go ahead to sports, and you can see all the various sports calendars that are available. So if you're a baseball fan, like in my family, you can go ahead and look for the Major League Baseball team calendar, and you can go ahead and add all of the various teams and or the All-Stars calendar right directly to that directly into your calendar. So again, if that fits within your industry, that may be really important. Again, here you have contacts, birthdays, and events. This is rather new, but this allows you to be able to take all the contacts within Google Contacts and push their birthdays and other major events that are listed in there. So potentially if there's an anniversary or something like that, any milestone that's listed in the Google Contacts record will show up within this Contacts birthdays and events calendar, which is very helpful if you want to remember people's birthdays and anniversaries, including your own husband or wife's, yours and your husband or wife's anniversary. So you can go ahead and do that by that calendar. Day of the year, this one, of course, tells you what day of the year it happens to be, whether it's the 147th day of the year or whatnot. It goes ahead and calculates the days towards the 365th day of the year. And then, of course, as Hebrew calendar, phases of the moon. I like phases of the moon. I'm going to go ahead and subscribe to that so you can see it. You can see the star dates and sunrise and sunset for where you might happen to be. And I happen to be in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware right now. And so the calendar automatically noted my location and went ahead and pushed that to show me sunrise and sunset for the day. It'll also show you the week numbers. So some very cool options here within the interesting calendars. And you can see that Google went ahead and added the phases of the moon right here for me. And then right here, I'm not sure you can see it, very faint, but it shows me that we have a full moon right there tonight. So, well, it shows me that for Tuesday. I'm not sure, it's not showing me today, but there you go. You can see the moon, the phases of the moon published. All right. So here, of course, we have the calendar, the main calendar for this particular account, and you can see I can turn it on and off. As well, I can go ahead and change some characteristics about this calendar if I wanted to. I could turn the tasks on and off, like as I showed you, just by turning on and off. And if this would let me, I'm not sure why it's not letting me hover. When you hover over these calendars, you should be able to get this little drop-down menu. And I'm wondering why it's not giving me that here. Well, we can go into our calendars here. So there's two ways in order to be able to work with the calendars that you've created. And then I'll go over the interface here, but I just want to go over some of these background settings at the outset. Either way, normally when you hover over the W3 Consulting here, for instance, this main calendar for this account, you would get a drop-down menu. Just like if you were hovering over tasks, it was doing that before. It seems like there's a glitch within the browser. But either way, so we're just going to click on the drop-down menu. I'm going to go ahead and click on Settings, and it'll take me over to show me all of the calendars that are available, both my calendars I can view and modify, and then the calendars that are view-only. Okay? So here under W3 Consulting, if I click on that calendar, it'll take me into the main settings about the calendar. I can change the name of the calendar. I can give it a brief description. Now, if this calendar is public, I'll show you this again about sharing, this description becomes very powerful because this allows, very similar to any web page, being found within the Google Calendar network. So you do want this description to actually be keyword-rich, very similar to how you would make your website keyword-rich. Okay? You can place a location. So if your calendar is geographically located, that is that it's about your restaurant's events, you go ahead and put a location in there, a very specific location if you need to, so that people can go ahead and know, oh, these events are at this particular retail or restaurant location. You can change time zones if you need to, so that you can have the calendar show the appropriate time. And people will, of course, in their own Google Calendar installation, have those times automatically calculated to their local time zone. So if someone were in San Francisco and looking at a New York calendar, it would show it in Pacific Coast time, at least right now, Pacific Daylight Saving Time. Here, the calendar has some really cool features, which it allows you to go ahead and export the calendar in XML, Ical, and HTML. So if you were attempting to go ahead and push the calendar out to an Apple Ical calendar, for instance, if you have a Macintosh computer, a laptop or something like that, or one of the iOS devices, you go ahead and pull the Ical feed, and it will go ahead and pull those calendar events into your Ical calendar. Now, the limitation here is that you can only view this calendar if you have access to the calendar. That is, you have to be the owner of that calendar. And you can't modify these events with these addresses. This is nothing more than a publication of data. It's not an interactive component. There are other ways in which you can use Google Calendar to do that, but just these three items are not it. These private URLs are for you specifically, and only you should use them because the private addresses, again, allow you to be able to see everything on the calendar. So, you can go ahead and see all the detail and those types of things that you might not want to show other people. So the private URLs are here, and it even gives you the ability to reset the private URLs. Say, for instance, you had these URLs used on your mobile phone or your laptop, and you lost either of those or they were stolen, you can go ahead and reset the private URL so those people don't have access to them. There on the next tab under the calendar details, you can see that you can make the calendar public. So as I said in the last example, say you were, last screen, the example was that you have a restaurant and you want to go ahead and make that calendar public. So I'm going to make this calendar public, and now everyone who has Google Calendar can basically subscribe to the calendar. But more than that, you can publish this calendar on your website, and anyone can go ahead and view that. The really cool part about the calendar itself is if we go back a screen, you can see here it says embed this calendar in the center. Once the calendar is now public, this iframe code, this little bit of code here, you can go ahead and copy and paste into any of your websites. You have to be able to, a little bit of behind the scenes coding, but if you have that ability, you can go ahead and paste this code into the HTML of your website, and then it will basically show Google Calendar in its format. Again, this is a public view-only setting, and so you can publish events and potentially new deals that you might have going on. So if you have a sale, you can put a week-long sale on the calendar so that your customers or potential customers can see the potential, really great opportunity to come visit your retail or restaurant location. So publishing calendars with sales, deals, events can be very, very powerful for driving traffic into your business. So we can make the calendar public, and then you can share only for your busy information. So for instance, if you were attempting to publish your calendar for purposes of your professional business, say you're an attorney and you have a desire for people to be able to schedule appointments with you, but of course you don't want to show your who your clients are, those types of things for ethics reasons, but you can go ahead and put share only. What this allows you to do is to, of course, say to your clients, you can look at my calendar now and see which are open available slots in my calendar, and then email me or call my secretary and go ahead and schedule by those means. So here under the next section is share with specific people, and sharing with specific people means that you can go ahead and add an email address, and it will push an invitation to those people for varying levels of administrative access. So here we have make changes and manage sharing, meaning that person that you gave access to this calendar to would allow you to manage not only the creation of events, but changing events, and then of course managing the sharing, who can share and not. So this is the highest level of administration of the account. The next level down is someone who can add, change, or delete events. Then the next one down is just being able to see all the events, and then of course see the event details underneath that. And then the final one is the least amount of information in a public setting, but it's basically just whether or not the space is available or not available with the calendar. So you can give 4 levels of access to any person. So if this person were someone on staff, you would probably give them access to be able to make changes to the events, but not necessarily manage sharing unless they were a manager, and they had to go ahead and manage who else, if someone was added to staff and needed to be able to see and manage that calendar. So if you were, take this from a public setting and move this to having a staff employee schedule, you could do the employee schedule by having one calendar where you displayed everyone's information, and all of the employees would have access to this calendar, but only you and, say, your management team would have access to be able to change events to the calendar. So you could actually publish the calendar, on a weekly, monthly, into perpetuity if people's schedules are regular, and which is what happens in my office. We have a regular calendar schedule. Some people are part-time, and so those part-timers just are, it's a repeating event, and it just shows the part-time schedule that overlaps people's full-time schedules, so we know when people are in the office, and so it really helps, especially since I'm not in the office very often. I try to put my calendar time in that calendar as well, so people know, oh, I can actually catch Raymond real live in person when he happens to be here, so people pay attention to it. All right, the next one down is, this one says tips for sharing with coworkers, and this is actually Google's little section within their Google Apps for Business, and it actually gives you a little how-to on how to actually set up sharing with Google Calendar for business. All right, so that's helpful. If we go to the next one over, and I'm just going to cancel that. Next one over, these are for notifications. And this is really the most powerful part about Google Calendar. Google Calendar allows you to be able to add up to, I believe, 5 of these types of reminders. So here we are, 5 different types of reminders that by default this calendar will automatically issue no matter what the event, okay? So notice these are all event, these are condition precedent, so these are going to be, before the event. So they're always going to notify you before the event, not after the event. So here you can have a choice of email or pop-up, and pop-up means that you go ahead and have the on screen, if you have the browser open and Google Calendar open, it will pop up a little message in front of you. Now, notice that this doesn't have SMS, but you do have the ability to set up SMS. And basically, if you go ahead and click on Set up your mobile phone to receive notifications, it will give you a third option that will say text or SMS, okay? And so instead of an email or pop-up, you can actually have a mobile message sent to you for purposes of going ahead and receiving notifications. So here, we can go ahead and say, I want, this to be, 1 week before the event. I want to get an email so that it reminds me. And then you can get progressively, and more frequent messages as the event comes closer to you, if this event is potentially that important. If they're not important, then you might not want as many messages. But so I have a standard, one where I basically get a pop-up once. Basically 1 hour before every event or half hour before the event, so I know to leave for purposes of traveling. If I need to go ahead and make my way over to an event from hotel to a conference center or something like that, I know to put an hour, pop-up and an hour SMS, and that will go ahead and shoot me a message. But I also have a message that goes ahead and emails me a week in advance of the events and 2 weeks in advance of the events, so that I make sure that everything's in place for the event upcoming. So you can have those great options. Now, the other side to that is once SMS is enabled, you can then go ahead and have Google text message you. But if you wanted to go ahead and add events to the calendar, you can go ahead and do that as well. So if you go ahead and note the particular country, phone number, your carrier, and then go ahead and get it'll basically text message you a code. You go ahead, plug your code in there, finish setup, and now under this mobile setup, you'd be able to then go ahead and have a couple of options. And it would show you the options that you could text into the system. So in Google Calendars, for instance, the settings that you have are to be able to, one, send notifications like this. Okay, so you can receive notifications before each event. But you can also add events into the calendar. So for instance, if I wanted to, add that I have an event at 4 p.m. tomorrow, dinner with Lisa, I could put 4 p.m., tomorrow's 7/7, or 7/6. I put in, tomorrow 7/6. I put 4 p.m. 7/6. Happy hours with Lisa, or whatever the event was, meeting with Lisa. And now that will be added to my default calendar within Google Calendar. You cannot add to non-default calendars yet, or potentially ever. I don't think Google really wants to go through the effort to do that at the moment, but I think that it would be useful to be able to add to any of your calendars, but you can only add it to your default calendar. So what it does is it understands that 4 p.m. 7/6 is the date and time, or the time and date, and automatically parses that out of the description of the calendar event, and then meeting with Lisa becomes the description of the event. It makes the event 1 hour in duration by default, and then you can go into your calendar, of course, and fix that if you need to. But if you're on the road and you just need to get that into the calendar before you forget that you need to be there, you can go ahead and text message in there. The other thing that you can do with mobile is you can actually get notifications of new events by manually. So you can go in and say next. If you type next to the Google Calendar 5-digit short code, you can, I believe it's 40404. So if you type 40404, or maybe that might be Twitter. Either way, the short code that Google Calendar has a specific short code. And you basically type the 5 numbers, and you go ahead and type those 5 numbers. You type in next into the message, hit send. It will actually send back to your next calendar event that's in your calendar, and so you know what your next appointment is going to be. You can also type in other types of things like last meeting or tomorrow or things like that. There are various ones that are out there. And once you've done that, you can go ahead and really manage your calendar pretty well. So that's under mobile setup. And so very, very helpful to be able to have the ability to text message calendar events in, get notifications, and then, of course, be able to get these manual notifications in as well. So once you leave this main calendar screen, of course, you can create new calendars. You can import calendars. So if you have a current calendar, say, in Microsoft Outlook, and you wanted to import that into Google Calendar, you can go ahead and do that. And as well, go ahead and export this calendar to another system if you needed to, so you're not really locked into the system at any time. So you can create new calendars here, and of course add new calendars as we talked about. We talked about Google Calendar's mobile setup. You can go ahead and set up one mobile phone associated with one account, so you have access to that one account. Under Google Calendar Labs, this is really fun. Google basically gives each of their software engineers an allotment of time, 10%. And this is an idea that came from another company some time ago, but Google basically gives 10% of all of their staff time for the software engineers to code anything that they want to that they believe would be helpful to Google or to Google's consumers. And so most of these products that become labs also become major features of Google Calendar over time. But they sit inside this labs area because they're before beta. That really, it's a test world. So as it says right there at the top, it says they may change, break, or disappear at any time. And so these can be really powerful tools, but note that they're not really here in a permanent setting, but you can use them while they're of course here. So here in this case, the various options that are in here, I'm not going to go through them for time purposes, but this gives you some really great options. The Smart Rescheduler, for instance, allows you to be able to look at multiple people's calendars to evaluate conflicts in their calendars, obtaining conference rooms, and all sorts of other stuff. And that, of course, reminds me that you can have a calendar for assets as well as people. So, for instance, this is the, at least in my office, who has the projectors and which projectors do people have. And so, it's always a fight to figure out where the projectors are. And so we go ahead and we have a calendar that basically shows the projector's calendar, and the projector's calendar shows who has the projector on which days and times, and that's really helpful. So there's that. There's year view, so that you can show a really quick view of the entire year at a glance. Some other really cool ones. It shows your next meeting. You can even see the world clock to see who's in morning or evening and away from your time zone. So very cool calendar labs available to you as well. All right, so we're going to go back to general, which is basically covering all calendars. And again, labs covers all calendars, and this general tab covers all calendars. But you can change, of course, your country, and then, of course, change time zone and day format, all those fun little things along the way. You can, of course, show weather in Fahrenheit or Celsius, and I'll probably show it in Celsius. And then, of course, you can do a couple of things down here at the bottom that are really important. So here it says show events you have declined. So in general, I don't want to see events that I've declined, and so I would say no. But for instance, if you've declined an event but you still want to know the event is happening, you would go ahead and leave that as yes. Automatically add invitations to my calendar. I get invitations for all sorts of events nonstop all the time, and so I don't allow events to be automatically added to my calendar, because then I have to manually go back into the calendar and delete them if I say no. So again, it says yes, yes, but don't send event reminders unless I have responded yes or maybe, which means that it'll add the calendar automatically to my event upon invitation. And then, of course, if I say yes or maybe, it'll then initiate the event reminders that I have for my default calendar. Excuse me. And then no, only show events to which I've responded to, basically saying that it will only show events that that I've gone ahead and said yes to from the invitation within the email. So once I've received the email within my mail account, then I click on yes or maybe. It'll then get added to my calendar at that point, and not until then. So here it says alternate calendars, and of course we of course go by the a different calendar than some other countries. In this case, it gives us the standard calendars for those other countries so that we can go ahead and change the calendars over to, if that country is what you want to use, then you can do that. This one displays tips, and these tips can actually be really helpful. So I like to actually enable tips, and I also enable the keyboard shortcuts. If you click on Learn More here, you can see all of the various keyboard shortcuts available to you. This allows you to keep your hands on the keyboard as opposed to having to go back and forth between mouse and keyboard, which can cause repetitive stress injuries. So in general, I like to print this little keyboard shortcuts out and have it sitting around so that I can, if I know that K will move me to a previous date range, J will take me to the next date range or whatnot, I can go ahead and do that so I can jump around the calendar without having to go back and forth between keyboard and mouse. So very helpful. All right, so those are the general items. You can also get and have access to them by going to this settings here and then also the labs, okay? Google Calendar has enabled something called offline, and many of Google products are now starting to open up this option, Gmail as well as Google Docs and some other ones. And basically this allows you to be able to interact with the calendar even if you've disconnected from the web. And then once you reconnect to the web, it'll resynchronize the data that you've natively stored within this browsing session, okay? So this is really cool. It works in most modern browsers. So there may be browsers that it doesn't work in, but for the most part, it works in most of the browsers, okay? The display density as well, I've talked about this in previous webinars. This particular display is going to give you the most space. It'll take over most of the space within the screen. But say if you have a smaller screen, it basically, in this case, pushes the data a little bit closer to each other, and then of course compact, where it basically doesn't give you any white space, so as limited white space as possible so that everything is sort of crunched together. But since I have the display screen and I want you to be able to see it today, we're going to leave it as comfortable. So, all right, let's go over the interface. So in the interface, we have a couple of different options here, and if we go, this is of course calendar. This will allow the screen to refresh. But since I have keyboard shortcuts enabled, I can also click on R, and it will automatically refresh my screen. If I'm away from today, if I click on another week, notice this Today button then becomes active, and if I click on Today, it always jumps me back to today. And the calendar will always show me a red line that will show me exactly where in date and time I am. If I click in the calendar on any date and time, it'll open up a quick create calendar event. So in this case, it'll tell me that since I clicked on this space, 10:30 to 11:30 on July 5th, it can tell me to write in a description. In this case, it gives me the example breakfast at Tiffany's. If I go ahead and paste that in there, it will go ahead and create the event automatically. And notice I said as before, it'll standard default. That little clock there shows all the event alarms or event reminders associated with that account. So those are set up and will then initiate on their schedule. Of course, if we've passed that schedule, in this case 10:30 is already passed, it will not trigger those event reminders, really. So that's that. If I wanted to go ahead and add more information, I can go ahead and do that by clicking on the description of the event, and it will take me in there and allow me to change all of the event. I can make something an all-day event. I can change particular parts of the duration of the event. I can go ahead and put something on repeat. And the repeat functionality within the Google Calendar events are actually really powerful. You can not only do every day, daily, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, every Tuesday, Thursday, weekly, and then choose, of course, if it's a weekly basis, you can choose Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday manually in here, or you can go ahead and just do that as every weekday within the system by default. So you have lots of different options. You can say weekly and then say every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks I want this event to go ahead and remind me. I can do that for a number of occurrences, and so I can do it into perpetuity, which means it never ends. And then I can also do it, for the next 6 weeks, and basically do that, based on the number of weeks. But if I know that I want this to go on for basically until a particular date, not necessarily a number of occurrences, I can go ahead and choose date in the calendar as well, okay? So lots of options there for repeats. You can go ahead and find a time. This, of course, goes in and looks at all of the various attendees for an event. So you can go ahead and add multiple people's calendars into this event just by adding their Google account. So if you know the email addresses of the people that you're going to be working with, and they have their Google calendars shared with you, so this is presuming it's your staff most likely, and you go ahead to your staff and you say, add the 3 people that you're going to meet with. It'll then show their open available times in the calendar, and then you can go ahead and schedule within those particular event open spaces. Okay, really cool. You can change the calendar that this particular item is published on, which I do frequently. So I may add a calendar event from my default to my default calendar by sending a text message, but then want to go ahead and add it to another calendar, which is not on there. You can also change ownership of a particular event. So if I don't want to be owner of that particular event, I want the owner to be someone else, I can go ahead and click on Change Owner, and it will give me the option to go ahead and do that. So no change. We can add more descriptions. So if I wanted to add a meeting agenda, if I wanted to add instructions on parking or instructions on getting in the front door or whatnot, we can go ahead and do that. If this were a webinar and I wanted to give a webinar link, I could go ahead and do that. And you can see that Google automatically figured that since I said breakfast at Tiffany's, it presumed that the location of where I was going to be meeting was at Tiffany's. If I placed a U.S. address, or actually any global address, it would have gone ahead and put that address in here as well. And if I clicked on Map, it would go ahead and launch Google Maps to show me that particular location on Google Maps. So you can run directions and do all that fun stuff from that as well. You can change any of these specific events. So each of your calendars is colored, and I'll show you that in a minute. But here you can also change the color of every single event as well. So say, for instance, you have 3 standard colors for your calendars, but you want to make events that are really important red. And so Breakfast at Tiffany's here can be made as red, so it stands out. And you can also change the specific reminders for this event. So again, we created default calendar event reminders, but now we can go into the specific event and say, oh no, this event is really important, and I want to add as many event reminders as possible so that I don't forget about preparing for or getting to the event on time. You can go ahead and show the event specifically as available or busy time within your calendar against its default. You can go ahead and change its privacy, so you can make it public or private based on that as well. All right. Here under guests, you can give guests various levels of access to this particular event, administrative access. So here you can allow the event for the calendar. Guests can go ahead and modify the event. If you allow that to happen, they can invite others. They can see the guest list. And sometimes when you're inviting a large number of people that that don't know each other, you may not allow them to see the guest list, and they might be able to invite others, for instance. So you have some options there. All right, so back on the event. If I go ahead and just click the button again for Create an Event, I get Delete or Edit. I can go ahead and just delete the event right from the event space. And then up at the top it says Event Deleted, and then for about the next 30 to 60 seconds, it leaves this little undo button here. So if you did make a mistake and you wanted to bring the event back, you can go ahead and recover that event. But once you do go ahead and hit delete and the undo button goes away, it is gone forever. So don't think that you're going to find it again. Here it shows you the whole month at a glance, but you can, of course, go ahead and jump from month to month. And then if any month, any day on this calendar has a bolded number, you can see here that there is there's an event on that day. Okay, so you can see that all of these Saturdays have an event, and this Monday has an event here. So that's how you basically can see what's on the calendar. And then, so I'm sorry, I jumped over this. This is the Create button. If you click on Create, it takes you to a brand new event. I mean, that's pretty simple. But if you click on Drop Down, that's actually a quick add, very similar to actually clicking in the event on the date and time. But this is pretty much similar to if you were SMS messaging into Google Calendar, you would go ahead and be able to do that. So here, if I typed in dinner with Michael 7 p.m. tomorrow, as this says, it would go ahead and add that automatically to my calendar. So we'll click on Add, and you can see that down here now at 7 p.m. tomorrow, it went ahead and threw in an hour-long event, Dinner with Michael. Okay, so very, very smart tool for being able to figure out what you're trying to do. Don't try and get too fancy with it, though. I mean, it's pretty much, regular date and times. You can use 24-hour clock. So if you wanted to say that something was at 7 p.m. tomorrow and 24-hour clock, you could put 1900 hours. So put 19:00 and then space tomorrow, and it would understand that it was 7 p.m. tomorrow in the calendar. But anything beyond that, it's not it's not going to take words written out or things like that. And so I was talking about the colors of calendars. Here are the colors of calendars. you have these colors of the calendars, and now it's showing me the drop-down menu that it wasn't showing before. But you can see that I can make any of these calendars one of the number of these calendars that are colors that are showing on the palette. So in this case, there's 6 across and 4 down. So there are 24 options available to me to be able to give a color to, and so I could change the color of any of these to that particular calendar color, and then that indicates that. But again, I can change the color of the native event for purposes of that as well. So that's that. All right, so going over, you can see that this is showing me in normal week view. We can show this in day view, and also what's called agenda view. Agenda view, of course, shows these items in a scrolling agenda list, and then you can, of course, open these up to see details about those particular events. Now it's actually showing us the phases of the moon in the column. That's great. Anyway, so agenda view is really great if you have lots and lots of stuff in the calendar and you really can't see what's going on specific days from the view that you have open. I like agenda view for that. So you can see things in day, you can see them in week, you can see them month, and then you can see them in this customized option. So under this, it says show us 4 days at a time. So you can see these 4 days across. But for instance, maybe you don't want to. Maybe you want to see 2 weeks at a glance. So if you go down to settings and jump over to the general tab, you can see here that we can change the default view here. So we can change it from week to our custom view. And then for our custom view, we can say 2 weeks. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And now you can see that instead of that being 4 days here, we can now change this to 2 weeks at a glance. And now it shows us 2 weeks in these 2 levels. So we can see this July 1st to July 7th and 8th to the 14th. And now we can, of course, click in those calendars. And again, since it's showing us the full day, it's not giving us the ability to click in a specific day and time, but it is giving us the ability to go ahead and type in a time and a description for the event, and it'll create events from that page as well. Notice that it also gives us the ability to create a task for that day as well. So if I wanted to do something first thing in the morning on a particular day, I can go ahead and just click on that, click on task, create the task description and the note, and now it will be available for me to get that done as soon as I sit down in front of my calendar on the day that I prescribed. Okay, so really cool. And so I just noticed these phases of the moon are only showing the changes in the phases of the moon. So you can see that we had a full moon on the 3rd, and then of course we'll go to the last quarter of the moon on the 10th. That's why it's not showing the calendar, the moons on every day. And so those are the views. So really, really handy to be able to see and change the particular views that you have. Under More gives you only really 2 options. Refresh, which if you have keyboard shortcuts enabled, you can just click on R. But it gives you the ability to print the calendars. And so you can go ahead and click on Print, and it will show that calendar and all the calendars that are currently in view. So in this case, I have W3, the dummy email address, the one that you're not supposed to email. I keep getting emails at this email address. If you need to reach me, use the last slide's email address, ray@w3cinc.com. But basically this email address's account here is showing, and then all the other calendars that I have currently in view. So and then of course the time frame. So this is showing me July 2012 and Eastern time, and then it shows all the events that are showing in there. I can of course change the font size so that more events show. Many times what it will be is, I'll look at the calendar and it'll have too many events, and so it won't be able to show everything. So if you click on small, so go ahead and shrink those to really, really small letters. But if you don't need them to be so small, you can go ahead and put it on the largest. You can change its orientation between portrait and landscape, and you can also show events that have been declined, and then also change it to black and white. If you're going to print it in black and white, you might as well just turn it to black and white so that the print rendering is actually clearer. If you leave it as color, then it attempts to produce a grayscale print from your laser or color printer, and it will actually be a little bit blurrier. So go ahead and make sure that you click on black and white, and it'll go ahead and make the resolution proper. You can also change the date range right from within the print window. So you can't change the layout of the specific view that you're in. So we're in 2-week view, so it will show us 2 weeks at a time, but we can change the 2 weeks that we're looking at. So we can change from the 15th to the 28th just by clicking in that little calendar option. Okay, and then you can go ahead and click Print, or you can click Save As, which will save a PDF of that particular calendar print. So that's really helpful if you need to print and run out the door. Many times, I want to know my calendar schedule for the day, and if I didn't have a smartphone
and I wanted to go ahead and know my calendar for the day and my appointments, and to be able to make notes alongside those appointments, I just put today's calendar in agenda view or potentially in day view, and then click my to the door. So really helpful there. Then that's pretty much it that I had to talk about regarding Google Calendar. Google Calendar has the mobile options. So if you are on a mobile phone and you go to google.com/m/calendar, so M as in Michael or M as in mobile, /calendar, it will take you to the mobile version of the calendar. So even if you don't have a smartphone per se, but you can browse the web, if you go to M and go to that mobile site, and typically Google knows that you're loading it from a mobile browser and will basically automatically forward your web domain to the mobile site, and it will allow you to go ahead and manage your website directly from the mobile view. So unlike the text messaging where you can only add to your default calendar, if you're in a mobile browser, you can add to different calendar events. So you have full control to be able to go ahead and add them to different calendars that you have set up, and you also have the ability to see those calendars in their native color, so you can see them changing around. If you have sort of a stronger mobile browsers like the Apple iOS Safari browser, or if you're on Mozilla Firefox or on the Android browser or something like that, you can go ahead and use the native HTML5 functions of the mobile browser. So it scrolls and you can click on items and they just open up. It's a very, very beautiful interface. So it's very practical for being able to use on the road without having a native app installed. I mean, in general, if you're not using the native applications on the Android or Apple iOS browsers, I wouldn't even install the applications. I would really just create a bookmark link to the mobile browser site and use the mobile browser, because it's really beautiful. It works intuitively and it works fluidly. So I wouldn't waste the space by downloading an application that you don't need. I would just use the mobile browser version. So with that, Tracy, if there are questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and then we can go on.
Thank you, Ray. We do have a few questions here right now. The first two have to deal, I think, with importing, but the first one is how do you switch from Outlook to Google Calendars, and then the second one was I need to sync my Glenbrook sign-up service with Google Calendar.
Okay, so let's talk about Microsoft Outlook, and then I'll have you repeat the other question. So Microsoft Outlook, basically what you do is you would go into Microsoft Outlook and go ahead and export your calendar events within Outlook to a file. And so it allows you to be able to do that. Now, if you are still using Outlook on your desktop and you wanted to just have the component, the ability for it to synchronize, there is a Google Calendar synchronization tool that you can download, a function, a plugin that you can go ahead and install into Microsoft Outlook. And if you just type into Google Calendar, Microsoft Outlook Sync, it will pull up the plugin, and you can go ahead and download that plugin. It will basically synchronize your Outlook calendar with your Google Calendar account, and you can go ahead and manage basically your Google Calendar directly from Outlook. If you're forgoing Outlook altogether, which would be my option, my recommendation, if you're not using it for really anything else other than calendaring and email, Gmail and Google Calendar really do them better. You can go ahead and export the calendar items in the format that Google asks you to, and there's only a couple of formats that you can do that in. It'll go ahead and allow you to import those items. In the portion of the webinar when I went over the general settings, if you went from the general tab to the calendars and then went inside the calendars tab, underneath there it said create a new calendar, and it said import calendars and then export calendars. Just click on that import calendars button, and it will tell you, upload this file, and it will put all of your events that are currently in your calendar into that Google Calendar installation, and then you just move on. And then what was the other one?
I need to sync with my Glenbook calendar. Glenbook is an online scheduling software.
I'm not familiar with the online scheduling tool that's being talked about, so I can't speak to it. But if you touch base with me offline, and let me know what the formatting is of that particular site, I can potentially help. My email address is at the bottom of the slide here. So you'd have to touch base with me to figure out what it is. I mean, most of the scheduling tools allow you to be able to go ahead and export in some fashion. If they don't, I would email the developer of the tool and find out if they can't export in a format that Google Calendar would like.
Okay. Is there a way to keep a calendar open on a smartphone, say an Android or an iPhone?
To keep a Google Calendar open, if the person could clarify if I'm missing the question here. So that means to give notifications, I'm supposing, sort of prompting and notifications within both the major operating systems that are smartphones and BlackBerry as well, if you want to pull BlackBerry into it. All of the calendars allow you to be able to basically synchronize to a Google account. And so therefore it will natively take your Google Calendar and put those events into your scheduler. So it will automatically give you those event reminders that are built into the Google Calendar. Is that what you're talking about?
We'll wait and see
if not, then I can happily answer if it's another conjugation of that question.
He followed up by saying more of a phone question than Google. He had another question, which was how to sync an Android phone with your Google Calendar.
Okay. Well, that's easy. Android gives you the ability to go under accounts. Basically, it's the account sync, and as long as you enable your your Gmail account or your Google account with that Android device, it will automatically give you the option to synchronize your Google Calendar. So, it depends on the Google Android device you're dealing with. All of them can be minorly different. If you're on Verizon or Sprint or AT&T, for instance, you have different Android devices, and of course tablets are different as well. But either way, when you go into the system settings, you go into accounts, you go ahead and allow that the synchronization option, and you just go ahead and synchronize that account. It'll tell you, do you want to synchronize your mail? Do you want to synchronize your calendar? And you just say yes. You click that box, and it'll automatically synchronize your Google account, calendar to your Android device.
Okay. If a client sends you an email with a date for a meeting with Google Calendar, pick that up and automatically add it to your calendar, or at least prompt to ask. The email's going to your Gmail account.
Right. So in Gmail has a couple of plugins, labs that allow for events to be interpreted, and Gmail natively has some of those things set up to be interpreted. So yes, if you look in, and forgive me for not knowing this, but I'm not sure whether this is a Gmail Labs item or whether this is native in Gmail. But in my particular instance of Gmail, when I get a new event, it literally says, there's a little Add to Calendar button on the right-hand side panel. So, you have your main inbox view, that's sort of where the text of the email appears. Right to the right side of that within Gmail is a little panel, another column that shows a couple of things. One of those says Add to Calendar. It actually tries to interpret what's in the email, address, description, date and time, and description of the event. And you can just click on that Add the Calendar button, and it will push that calendar to that event to Google Calendar for you to add.
Great.
So if it's not native within Gmail, it's definitely a Gmail Labs item because it does it in my system very easily. So.
Okay.
Now it doesn't get it right very often. I'll admit that because the reality is that people write events in all sorts of crazy ways. So frequently I can't use it, but it may work for you. At least to get the date and time into the calendar, and then you can change the event description.
Okay. What was the Google mobile site again? Was it google.com/m?
Yeah, so all of the mobile applications are accessible through google.com/m. And at that point, you can just add /calendar, and it will take you to the calendar tool, or you can just click on the calendar app, which will show on the screen in the mobile browser. Now, on iOS devices, Apple iOS devices, that's the iPhone, the iPod Touch, and the iPads, as well as on Android, and I believe now some of the other browsers that are on some of the mobile systems, Google will push you through to a site called Google Sync, which is an application that allows you to synchronize various Google tools with your native smartphones. If it does that, then you basically have to go to a Google mobile site and Google the Calendar mobile app. So you just type in Google Calendar mobile, and it will take you to that page. But Google is basically trying to force you to go ahead and install the applications, and I don't necessarily believe that you need them because the mobile browser app is really, the mobile browser version is really great.
Okay. Next question. Someone suggested switching from a Microsoft platform to a Google platform in order to avoid having to download/import from Microsoft Outlook. Does that make sense to you? My entire computer is running on Microsoft, so how would it run on a different platform?
Well, Google Calendar is a web-based platform, so it would only run within your browser, which means that you can log in anywhere from any computer in the world that can connect to the World Wide Web. So as long as that computer is on the internet, you can connect to Google Calendar. So it's platform independent, as we call it. It's agnostic to the system. So whether you're on Microsoft Windows or whether you're on a Linux box or an Apple Macintosh, it doesn't really matter.
Okay. Can you share documents via Google Calendar, add documents to date and times?
So the Google Calendar in the labs section gives you the ability to enable a tool to basically attach Google Docs to an event. And so you can go ahead and add Google Docs to the event. So if you have a PDF, you can upload it to Google Docs and then share that Google Docs PDF or Google Docs document or spreadsheet or whatnot to that specific event. So you can do that.
Great. Well, Ray, that is the end of our questions for today.
Okay.
So I wanted to thank everyone for participating today. Today's webinar was recorded and will be posted to the Virginia SBDC website. Again, that's virginiasbdc.org under the online training. Tomorrow you'll be receiving a follow-up email on this webinar, and there'll be an evaluation link in the email. Please help us to continue to improve our training by taking the time to complete the evaluation. If you want to fill the evaluation now, I just pushed it out to you all under the chat window. If you're interested in expanding your digital presence, please contact your local SBDC to schedule one-on-ones with Ray. See you on July 19th for our next webinar on Google+. Thank you, everyone, for participating today.